You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
Hey, Hellions. Just a note before we start. This interview with Lara Hardin about her beautiful new memoir contains discussions of addiction and abuse. If those topics are hard for you, or if you have little ones around, we just wanted to give you a heads up. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fresh Takes from What Fresh Hell, Laughing in the Face of Motherhood. This is Amy. Today I'm talking to Lara Hardin. She is a literary agent, an author, a mother of 4, and stepmother of 2. She is a 4-time New York Times bestselling collaborative writer, including the #1 New York Times bestseller, Designing Your Life. Love Hardin lives in La Selva Beach, California, with her husband, Sam. Her new memoir is The Many Lives of Mama Love, a memoir of lying, stealing, writing, and healing. Welcome, Lara.
Thank you so much for having me.
Your story is incredible. So let's start. Please tell our listeners a little bit about your story and some of what this memoir is about.
So the story of my journey from soccer mom in the suburbs to opiate addict to shot caller in jail, which is like, for those who don't know what that is, it's like being president of the PTA, right? So that's the shot caller in jail. To spending a year in the Santa Cruz County jail away from all of my family, my children, and then having to rebuild my life afterwards and re-enter and then a journey through rediscovering my love of books and reading and writing and rebuilding. So it's a crazy story.
It's an incredible arc of redemption, and you make some really important points about redemption and what that means and who gets to have it, right? And who we think should be allowed to have it. And I definitely want to get to that. But let's start where the book begins. You have a great life. You're living in a beautiful home in a cul-de-sac in a lovely town in California, living like the full soccer mom life, at least from the outside.
It's a cul-de-sac of 2-story houses. I have, all 4 children, 2 stepchildren living with me. Everybody's in private school. I'm driving carpool. I am, going to AAU basketball games and, all of the sports with my older boys. And I'm keeping a secret that I'm actually pretending and I'm struggling with addiction to pain medication at first.
And by the time that you're arrested, it's getting to the point where you are stealing from other parents in the community to continue to sort of fund the addiction and live moment to moment.
Yeah. So after about close to a year of active, out of control addiction, and addiction is progressive and it gets worse and worse. And so the lying and stealing part of the subtitle, I would, go into the other mom's purses at drop off in the morning, for example, where no one locks their car, and stealing my neighbor's checkbook to write a check at the grocery store. So everything when the book starts is coming to a chaotic, I basically can't hide it anymore. And I've run out of places to run. I kept saying, I'm going to fix everything tomorrow. I'll get everything together. I'll stop doing this, and I thought at the time, like, I cannot ask for help. I cannot tell anyone I'm struggling with addiction. I was so ashamed of that. But also I thought, ironically, there's no way I could ever spend 30 days away from my children and go to rehab.
Right.
Right? Like unfathomable. Like how would they ever manage for 30 days without me? And so, there's a lot of craziness in addiction where you think you're holding it together and you're making up stories and you're desperately guarding that secret. So the book starts in that crazy time and with the sheriff's office pounding on my door and coming in and arresting me.
You make such interesting points about addiction. I'd never thought of it from the point of view of being a mom in this experience, and how for you being a mom, it kind of, I guess when you're addiction can take over everything. So being a mom became part of what enabled you in a way. Like, I'm doing all of this for my kids, right? I'm holding this together for my kids. Look what a good job I'm doing.
Yeah.
Instead of it getting in the way, it's like, right. And look what a perfect mom I'm being.
Right.
And you were. Like, it isn't like you were like, no, you were doing these things. It wasn't, you weren't doing them. You were doing them. But it sort of allows you to think, but I'm a perfect mom, which means I can't also be somebody who needs help.
Right. I can't ask for help. I can't admit I'm unhappy or depressed, or self-medicated or any of the things. And growing up, I didn't grow up in that emotional language where people are like, how was your day? How are you feeling? I just didn't have that. So that sort of, I can do it all and I don't need anyone and I'm perfectly fine. It was just my default mode.
You talk in the book about your own childhood and you say like you didn't really have something, your own experience of home as a child was very vague. It wasn't concrete or symbolic.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of blocked memories from childhood. There's a lot of addiction, alcoholism in my family, a lot of chaos and violence. And I retreated into books. That's kind of was my coping strategy from a very early age. And as soon as I graduated high school, I went as far away from home as I could and I thought I could out educate myself from sort of my family of origin, right? Like I say in the book, like I thought education meant inoculation. Like I can do well in school. I can go to college. I can go to graduate school. I was the first one in my family to go to college and graduate school. I can do all of that and I can, run faster than either my genetic predisposition or my coping skills or, I didn't, it wasn't that well thought out. It's always easy, certainly when you're doing memoir, to look back and see the threads and the patterns. But at the time you're just surviving. And I think I was in survival mode, as a mom from being a mom. I had my first 3 boys in 4.5 years, right? So, but also just in survival mode in life. Like, I'm just going to willpower my way through things. I'm going to pretend everything is okay. And eventually that catches up to you. It caught up to me.
So let's talk about the day that you were arrested. Your 3-year-old son was home with you and there's a pounding on the door.
Yeah. So my son, Caden, is my youngest. He was about a month away, a little over a month away from turning 4. And that matters actually to the story. But he was home. My other boys were all in school and my stepchildren were all in school. And, I just set him up back then. So this is, 2008, 2009. And the big show that he would watch was this show called Wonder Pets. I don't even know if that.
Yes, I'm very familiar.
I don't know if people know that show, and it's like the animals are in trouble and they're rescuing each other. So I just set him up and he had all his stuffed animals around him and the sheriffs pounded on the door and basically, I couldn't, the gig was up, right? Like it was kind of over for me. And I was begging them to let me call someone, a family member, to come get him. Because I was being arrested and my husband at the time was also being arrested. So I say in the book, when you go from like husband and wife to co-defendants, the romance is kind of over. But and I begged them and they wouldn't. And so they called Child Protective Services and they handcuffed me. My hands are handcuffed behind my back. And this is the moment that for a decade just played in my head and in my dreams, and, he was at that stranger danger age, very attached. He not spend a night away from me, so as chaotic as my interior world and the things I was doing, like I was still, functioning in that way. And so he's he's terrified and the house is full of people and he runs to me for comfort and my hands are handcuffed behind my back. So I can't comfort him. It still chokes me up, all these years later. And, in that moment, I'm just saying, it's okay. These are friends, right? Just to make him, and I watch as 2 strangers put him in, the back of a sedan and drive away. And it was like, in that moment, everything split. I was like, oh, this, it was just horrible. I was taken out, put in a police car. At this point, the cul-de-sac is full of sheriff's cars. The neighbors are watching. And I'm taken away and taken to jail. And the whole time, I was crying and I was like, where are they taking my son? What's going to happen to him? And as I was walking into jail to the booking area, the sheriff's deputy, and I remember this moment, he stopped and he said, you will never see your son again. You should not be anyone's mother. And in that moment, like I believed him.
Yeah.
I just like kind of hung my head and I was like, you're right. And so the redemption piece, like I really just believed at that point. Sorry, I still get emotional about it, even though I've written it and lived it. But in that moment, I just really believed I had completely failed at life, like imploded my life, imploded my children's life. Like, this moment is their future college essay application moment. And it's like, it's not what I wanted for them.
The day my life was ruined.
Right. Like I wanted them to have that perfect life that I didn't have growing up. And I just, like overachieved in failure, And so I really, in that moment thought, redemption is for people who are good and I'm just 100% bad.
And P.S., you were being told that for the people who were arresting you, right?
Yeah, that didn't, but it was like, yeah, I had some confirmation bias there.
I'm talking to Lara Love Hardin. She is the author of the new memoir, The Many Lives of Mama Love. We'll be right back. Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH.
Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING. So, Lara, there's so many things in this book that are outside my own experience and so many things that feel deeply relevant to me. Like, oh, I get that. I understand that. And something that was very revelatory for me, moving into the part of the book where you're in prison, is that prison, you say, if you look at a list of the red flags for domestic violence, you will find this jail's operating manual, the jail you're in. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, I mean, it is, jails and prisons were designed for men originally. Like women, especially in the jail system, they've had a 750% increase in incarceration rates for women over the last 3 decades. 80% of women in jail are mothers. But you have men who are controlling your daily schedule, who you have access to. You're separated from family and friends. They have complete 100% power. Like it is you have a group of women who are all deeply traumatized in some way. And many of the women I was in jail with weren't that much older than my oldest son, who was 17 at the time.
Oh.
Like so young, it would break your heart. And they'd been in and out. And the reasons women go to jail often are interpersonal reasons. It's from the men they're with, not, everyone's making, we all had our share of combined poor life choices in there, but women are in jail for very different reasons, and their experience of jail is very different than men's. And the guards, would abuse that power. And there's, a lot of concerning behavior that went on with the guards trading, like food is an amazing commodity in jail because you're starving and there's no great food. And, when I was first there, I would see the guards, they're doing their checks at night, and I'd watch them go into a locked room. And I was like, do I smell McDonald's or am I hallucinating? And so there were some kind of trading going on in this sort of uneven power dynamic, which I talk about in the book. And yeah, it wasn't a great place in that sense.
And a tough place to get clean, to get well. I never realized before reading this book just how many drugs there managed to be in prison that if you want to continue using, you can probably figure out how to do that. It's harder not to use than to use.
Yeah. I mean, there were more drug in behind bars than I'd ever seen in my life anywhere, and I went to UCSC for college, right? So yeah, it's really hard, if that is your coping mechanism with difficulties in life and you're in this really difficult situation and facing potential, long-term prison sentences or, separation. A lot of, like I said, 80% of the women in jail are mothers with minor children, and everyone was going through that separation. Like I spent Mother's Day in jail, not, like probably the saddest day in the world is Mother's Day in jail.
You talk in the book about the first time that you talked to one of your teenage children on the phone after you're in prison, and you didn't even get to see this kid before you left. And it's such a imperfect, constricted sort of conversation. It must be very painful to try to communicate with them.
Yeah, it was so painful. I mean, the only good thing about jail, if you're an introvert, is like, there's nothing incoming that you don't want. Like there's no phone calls you have to answer, but to call out, you're calling collect and, calling your teenagers and just being like, I'm sorry. And there's no, for many months until I went over to the minimum security where I could see them, I didn't see them. I could only have these conversations over a staticky, jail phone for a few minutes. And what can you say in that except I'm sorry, which is so inadequate. And all your calls are also recorded and listened to by the jail. And it's just, it's hard to talk to a teenager on the phone anyway, but.
And then your youngest son is almost 4, I think you said, when it happened. So how do you even begin to communicate? You can't really so hi, how was your day? It doesn't work with any 4-year-old, let alone when you're in prison.
Yeah, that was really hard. I was able to, because he doesn't understand. He just thinks, you've left him, and that's so painful for him and painful to try and navigate as a parent, right? And how do you explain? When he would come visit me when I was in minimum security, they would bring him once a week to visit me, Child Protective Services. And he would bring in his bathing suit or shoes. He was trying to leave stuff, and kept wanting to stay there with me. And so it was like that, not as violent and painful as that arrest separation, but it was the most painful thing week after week because I had to tell him, I love you. I want to be with you, but you can't stay here. And he's like, no, I want to live with you here. It's like.
Right. And so when you first get to prison, there's just you're just completely despondent that there's no hope. And why would you feel like there's hope? You're being literally told there's no hope. There's no hope for you.
Right.
Right? You're done.
Yeah.
That's where you begin. And that's certainly, I can identify with that. How did you start to move past that?
Yeah. That's probably the darkest moment in my life where I just thought it'd be better for my children. I know this is supposed to be funny, but
that's okay.
This is not warning. This is about to not be funny. But, it was this moment where I thought it'd be better for my children to have a mother who isn't alive than to have a mother who's in prison for their life. I was just in this place where I didn't have that sort of inner spark or inner willpower. I thought there's no way I can get through what's in front of me. And so I just really believed, luckily, it was one night and I failed at that too, I'm spectacularly failing in life at that time. After that, it was just a very painful one baby step at a time and a whole lot of shame for over a decade, honestly. It wasn't I was frantically trying to meet the requirements to get my son back, because if I didn't complete all of the CPS requirements in a year, because of his age, I would lose my parental rights. Like, so I had this ticking clock where, what do you mean he'd be taken away from me forever? And I was also sentenced to a year in jail. So like reconciling those two things, yeah, it's really impossible. I mean, it was possible, but it's
right. But it wasn't easy. And that's interesting. They don't make it easy, right? So you have a year to get all these things done. And also you won't be able to get all these things done. And too bad.
Right. And sometimes, if a child's a little bit older, you might have 18 months to get them back, but you're given a 2-year sentence by the same county. Like the organizations within different counties don't really coordinate very well, and they're at cross purposes. And it makes it really, really hard to, when I was in jail, there was a mother and daughter who I was in jail with. They were both locked up and they would go in and out and had, for a good part of their lives, the mother and the daughter. And, and I remember they would get released and then like a week later, they'd get arrested again and be back in. And I was like, that's so crazy. Why would you ever come back here once you get out of here? And there was two things. One, they're like, this is actually kind of the best home we've had together. We get safe time together in here. But also, like, I didn't realize until I got out how easy it is to go back, like how the system and the barriers, especially for women, make it so easy to be put back in jail. Like the reentry system is so, so broken. And I had a master's degree and I had some family support and I had some, I had the privilege that comes with being a middle-class white woman from a suburb, right? And it was almost impossible doing everything right. Like it may not seem like it, but I'm a big rule follower, right? Like I will read all the directions. I will follow the rules. And it was really like, the way I describe it is like, walking on a tight rope in high heels in the wind. That's how like navigating probation and not going back to jail is,
And I guess maybe we're not really interested. I'm kind of moving over to your TED Talk. I'm going to link to it in the show notes because it's so good. But you talk about, redemption and getting to have redemption. And we kind of think that we kind of let people be defined by the worst thing they ever did, I think is how you put it. And there's something in it that maybe we want it to be walking on high heels and a tightrope in the wind. It should be really hard to earn your way out. But are we, what are we doing when we make it that difficult?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting thing, like because I thought I'm in jail, I'm going to, I was sentenced, I'm going to, do the jail sentence I've been given. I'm going to pay the money back I need to pay. I'm going to follow all the rules of probation and then I will be done paying. Like that's what I have to do to pay. And what I found out is that, you're never done paying, sometimes generations are paying for that worst thing you've done. And that's what I didn't want, but that's the truth of it. That's the broken part of it. And, and it's like, we want rehabilitation, but do we want rehabilitation if it lives next door to us? Do we want rehabilitation or do we rehabilitation, but still, know your place and know your limits? It's a really interesting conversation, I think.
I'm talking to Lara Love Hardin. Her new book is The Many Lives of Mama Love, and we'll be right back. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that, taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
I want to keep talking about this idea of redemption because you said something in this TED Talk that really spoke to me. You said, I believe that people should pay for their crimes, and then I believe that we should let them. That's the part that's missing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the part. I mean, I absolutely, I was guilty and I should have paid for my crimes, and I did. And I think people should, but I think we have to let them at some point. And we have to let ourselves. Like for me, it really was, part of it was like, are people going to forgive me? Are my children going to forgive me? Is my community going to forgive me? But ultimately for me, it was like, am I going to be able to forgive myself? That was really the hardest thing. Am I going to be able to stop judging myself?
And how did you do that? Let's talk about that.
Oh, it took way too long. Still, it's still a work in progress. Someone talked about my subtitle, like it's a memoir of lying, stealing, writing, and healing. I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally healed, totally cured. Good.
All good now.
But it is, shame is a really isolating emotion, and like when you talk about mom guilt and mom shame, like I've had it in various ways and like, oh, I'm not doing the organic baby food. And look, I'm, giving my kid nuggets and you're giving them organic broccoli, like all of that raising children. But like mom shame, going to jail, being called the neighbor from hell in the newspaper, publicly humiliating your teenagers, all of those things. It was really hard to get over it. And what I did is, when I got out and completed probation, I started working for a literary agency and I was very good adjacent, right? Like I was working with all these amazing people like Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and Brian Stevenson and Stanford professors. And I was like, but the whole time I was keeping a secret, right? So I used to keep a secret about my drug use, but now I was keeping a secret about my incarceration. And I was so afraid that people would find out this worst thing I've done and this worst part, time of my life. And so I was hiding. It was very isolating. Like, how do you, it's hard to make new friends as an adult woman sometimes, but I can even make friends really post jail because, like we're going to be friends, but I'm not going to tell you about my past. So I'm going to keep my distance, but then I feel guilty, like it's a really isolating emotion. And I just was so ashamed. I was just like, how did I become this person? And I want to be, I had to prove to myself that I was more good than bad, right? Like that's part of it too. But even think, my Caden, I did get him back, not to give the book away, but
happy ending.
Yeah, I survived. But, like I remember he's in first grade. Right. So this is a year after jail, first grade, new school, I'm back to school night, meeting me. It's not the first thing you're going to think like, oh, that, that's a convicted felon right there. But, there's this moment where you meet new moms. They're like, oh, Joey really wants to play with Caden. Can we do a play date? And there's this panic because I'm like, you probably like, you don't know my whole past. And if you did, you probably wouldn't want for whatever judgment, right or wrong, like it's fair, but you wouldn't want your child to have a play date at my house. And so it's like a really weird thing to navigate because it's not like meet someone, you're like, oh, hi, guess what? Here's the worst thing about me. So it was really isolating for a long time to not, and I think, and I said that in the TED Talk, like shame really multiplies in isolation. And that was true for me. And then it starts to heal in community. And I think in owning your story, it starts to heal too.
So that was it. I was going to say, because it's a big step from like, I don't want anybody to know this to here's a memoir of my life.
Yeah.
You work as a collaborative writer. Can you explain what that is for people who don't know?
Yeah. So I started working, when I was post jail, I answered a Craigslist ad and started working at a literary agency, part-time, 5 hours a week, and I was just sort of desperate to start rebuilding my life. And it was a literary agent who worked with Desmond Tutu. And I was like, oh, this is a fake ad. I didn't believe that. So I started working in a literary agency, and, I had an MFA in creative writing, and that's really what I always loved to do. But when I had kids, I was like, I can't, there's no money. I can't support our family with that hobby at the time. So I started working at this agency. The man who hired me, Doug Abrams, found out about my past and kept me there, but I was keeping it a secret from all these authors. And I started ghostwriting, and actually started ghostwriting in jail, writing letters for the other women to get them put into treatment instead of prison, or get a pass for high school graduation or a funeral, right? Or some big event. You can get a 2-hour pass. And so I would they would talk to me, and then I would write as them. And everybody I wrote for got the passes. And then I tried to write for myself to my oldest son high school graduation while I was in jail, my first child graduating high school, and my pass got denied. So later the judge said I did that so that you would never miss another one of your children's graduations. And I haven't, but it still would have been nice to go. But so I started, I've always found it easier to be other people than me, and so as a collaborative writer is like a ghostwriter. So I was working with the authors we represented. I was helping them write their books, right? So working with all these amazing people hidden in the acknowledgments of the books in the back, or maybe one I was on the cover, with, and just keeping the secret from them, and so afraid that my past was going to hurt the reputation of the agency I was working at, just really living in a lot of fear and shame, and still, still pretending in many ways like I'm very good at being other people, right? So then, I started telling a few authors. There's one author, Brian Stevenson, who wrote a book called Just Mercy, who's amazing. He was the first author we told, because he had asked me to work on a book with a man who had been on death row in Alabama for 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. This man, Anthony Ray Hinton. And so I was in Alabama, and we're at breakfast, and Doug's like, Lara, tell Brian about your past. And I was with my eggs, oh, this is my biggest fear, And I told him, of course, all the people we're working with are not super judgy people. The Dalai Lama is not going to be judgy, Brian Stevenson,
right.
definitely.
Or Brian Stevenson. Right. That's what I was thinking. These perfect people put in your path.
Yeah. And Brian was like, oh, that's so great. That'll really help you working on this book with Mr. Hinton. And so that was a moment I was like, oh, and then the way publishing, selling books, you sell a book proposal to editors in New York, right? And so I remember listening to those sort of meetings, the editors who wanted to acquire this book, The Sun Does Shine, and hearing Doug go, oh, I have the perfect collaborative writer working with him. Do you know how hard it is to find an MFA who's been incarcerated? It's a perfect writer. And these are editors I've worked with for years in business, right? And they were like, oh, I didn't know that about Lara. That's so great. Because it was going to, it became a selling point. And I was like, oh, this is shaking my whole worldview. But it was really when I did that TED Talk, and I just said, here's the thing I've been afraid of everyone Googling and finding out. And when I just said it, I had such a weight lift off of me. I felt lighter and freer. And I was like, okay, that's when I decided to do the book, and the book, it was really hard because this is my 13th book I've written, and my first book is me.
Wow.
So, 12 of those other books were by men, right? So I was like, what is my voice? I don't know my voice on the page. I don't know so it was, I had a few false starts, but I'm glad I did it. I let all my children read it, which is interesting, before it went to press, to make sure they're okay with me putting it all out there like I have.
Yeah, because it's brave. I mean, memoir, telling your story is going to help so many people. But of course, you're bringing your loved ones along with you as you're telling the story. I know what that's like, right? To be like, are you okay with this? Because we're going to do this together.
Yeah. And it's been optioned for a TV series. So I had to ask them that. I was like, are you okay with that too? Because, it'll be like a dark comedy.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've really gone there in this conversation, Lara, and I really appreciate it. But I want everybody to know, this book, it's beautifully written. It's incredibly compelling. It's incredibly moving. There are parts that are hilarious and funny. There's a part where one woman is taken out of prison to the hospital because she's having labor pains. And then immediately everybody runs to the phones to call their drug dealers. And it's like, woo, party. Because we have somebody on the outside. Just there's such crazy situations.
Well, she actually faked labor pains so we could get cute paramedics in there because everyone was bored, is really how the plan started. just to pass a Wednesday. Time in jail runs really, really slowly.
Yeah.
Like now my days feel like they go so fast, but there's something weird with time when you're in jail or locked up where it is like the days are so long. So long. So we needed to see some paramedics one day. That's just harmless fun.
So the book is a true journey, but there's hope, there's redemption, there's all of that on every page. And what do you hope people reading it might take away?
I mean, look, I think everyone has, maybe not to the level of things I've done, but everybody has something they're ashamed of or a time in their life or they feel isolated. So I'm hoping, to some people, I'm a cautionary tale, right? So like for moms, it's like, well, however bad a day you're having, you haven't done as bad as this. But I do hope that people, I wasted over a decade not owning my own story and living in shame and living in isolation and not getting the joy of connection that I have now, or wishing, I spent a lot of time wishing for a better past, trying to rewrite the past. And that is a big time waster. So I hope it resonates for people who've never been to jail, never struggled with addiction. But I think, there's a lot of people who struggle with addiction and there's a lot of people who love someone who struggles with addiction. So I think it sheds a little light on that. And, I hope people learn the language of asking for help. I hope I'm a cautionary tale of not asking for help when you can,
I've been talking to Lara Love Hardin, The Many Lives of Mama Love, a memoir of lying, stealing, writing, and healing is her brand new book. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes to all the places that you can buy the book. But Lara, tell our listeners where they might be able to find you on the internet.
So I have my website, laralovehardin.com. I'm on Instagram at laralovehardin. I also have just launched a nonprofit called the GemmaProject.org, and that's to help incarcerated and formerly incarcerated women. So I'm hoping that's what the book does also, because 80% of them are moms and they need our love and support to get through. Yeah.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'll put the link to that, of course, in the show notes and everything that you mentioned. Lara, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you so much.